Okay, guys. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Today I was gonna do my review of Seven, but since I'm still doing some reading up on that, I'll probably do that Thursday. But I wanted to do something today it's a little bit different, but it's something I found very interesting. I like to read a lot of different articles, more like editorials and opinion articles about Square Enix and the Final Fantasy series and where it's going and where it's come from. And usually I like to read them a lot of Kotaku. I think it was some sites like that. Um, I actually saw an article that was very interesting that some people may not see. No, some people may not agree with this. But the article stated it talks about the inevitable death of Final Fantasy. Now, a lot of people will sort of argue that Final Fantasy series will never die because it's too popular. It has such a lengthy history that it really can't die. And I sort of disagree with that because, especially with our economy today, and that inflation and recession, all that other stuff. You know, there's only really a few companies out there that I would say could never go out of business. For example, Sony could never go out of business because it's too huge. Microsoft, Apple, things like that. I think we already know that they're too popular and they make too much money to ever, declare bankruptcy. And before I actually get into the discussion, I actually want to put a disclaimer. I respect everybody's tastes and opinions on the different games and stuff. I'm not the type of person that if I don't agree with someone's opinions or their tastes, like a lot of trolls and a lot of fanboys do, that they'll attack them. They'll say that their opinions are shit, and basically, troll them. I don't like to do that. I respect everybody's opinion because everybody has different tastes. But I'm just gonna put it out there right now because this is part of the discussion I wanna that I'm talking about. I don't like 13. There, I said it. Now, before everybody starts getting their pitchforks and their torches out, I'll explain why a little bit later on as I, get into this. This article talks about how in recent years the Final Fantasy series has seen sort of a decline in popularity, and that is true. That is true to an extent. I mean, newer games do have their fans, but overall, the popularity of the series has gone down significantly, and so they sort of a lot of people sort of discussing like where when did this happen, and if I'm going to give my personal opinion about it, I would say that it happened after 10, because like I said in my 9 review, 9 was sort of the goodbye to what Final Fantasy was for the previous 8 games, which most of us knew them to be. 10 was a great game, it really was. But I think things really started changing after that, and I'm not saying 12 was a bad game either. I love 12 for what it was, but the popularity has gone down drastically, and I think it was because of 11. 11 was released, I believe, around 2002, 2003, and the reason why I think the popularity died down because of that game it was because it was exclusively an MMO, the massively multiplayer, games. The problem with this was that when it came out, I was a lot younger then too. Like it was available on the PS2, and I think later it was on the Xbox 360, like years later. I have the 11 Ultimate Secrets Edition, which has all the expansions and all that stuff. I got that a little bit ago, and I really played a little bit of it. But back in 2002, 2003, it wasn't like it was today, where every device you have it can connect to the internet, like Wi-Fi and stuff like that. To play Final Fantasy 11 back then, you had to not only buy the game, you had to buy the adapter for the PlayStation 2 to go online. You had to plug the wire into a telephone outlet. I never got it back then because back then being a lot younger, And especially because the internet was around, but it wasn't like it was like so accessible like it is today with Wi-Fi and things like that. A lot of people sort of just couldn't get it because of the limitations that the play. And besides that, it was not only paying for all that, but you're paying the what is it, the $15 it is a month to play. That was the first time in the series that something like that happened, and I think a lot of people were turned off about that because a lot of people, and rightfully so, sort of felt like, well, we're paying for the game and all that. Why do we have to pay, per month since we're already paying for, a lot of money as it is, especially to go online. And I think it was Square's mistake to do that because by doing that, yeah, I get it. You wanted to try new things and you wanted to, sort of, sort of advance, I guess you could say. But you also sort of put off a lot of your audience by doing that, by saying, hey, you can only do this online. And there's also been sort of discussions about it that, should MMO Final Fantasies be part of the number series? I don't think they should. My personal belief is that if it's, because we have so many, like, so many spin-offs and stuff like that. If a Final Fantasy game is going to be part of the main series, the numbered series, it should always be single player, okay, single player experience and plot oriented. That's all. Because all the other games are like that, so why just the drastic change? Nothing wrong with having Final Fantasy MMOs, but like, because I played a little bit of 11, a little bit of 14, and they're good games. But I just don't think they should be part of the main numbered series. I think that, make them spin-offs, make them separate games, that's fine. You're still going to see success because people still love MMOs, but this, I think, really hurt their popularity because of the because of how limited a lot of people could play 11 back then. Now, 12 was also, because 12, I like 12 a lot. 12 was really like a single player MMO experience because of how it was. Now, I'm not doing a review on that today. I'll do that another time. But basically, it really was like a single player MMO experience. Obviously, you had things like the real time fighting. There was no battle screens or anything like that. The license board, I don't think, was really the best choice to do things that way because it's like, okay, you have the license to use a certain weapon, but you're not going to get that weapon until much later in the game, so if you do it really early on in the game, it's like, what's the point? Because you can't get that weapon so much later on. I thought that could have been done a lot better. I didn't think that was the best, option to do that. But also, a lot of people also didn't like 12 so much because I think it was because 12 was more or less about the gameplay and the mechanics more or less than the plot. Because the plot, and all honesty, wasn't really that strong. Even though I loved the game, it really wasn't that strong. It wasn't as interesting or as emotionally gripping as the other Final Fantasies were. Which brings me into 13 now. Like I said before, I'm not trying to put up anybody's taste or their likes or whatever by me not liking 13. But this sort of fits into the main discussion about, the sort of decline of Final Fantasy because when we first started seeing 13 like previews, it was like an awesome game because it was very next gen, the presentation was very good, the character models were very realistic, but when I actually got to play it, I was, disappointed because number one was the ultra linearity. I mean, yes, 10 was linear, but 10 also had redeeming qualities about it. You had the side quests, you had the battle mechanics, which were a lot better. I mean, in 13, I didn't even find it a difficult game because I don't think I ever died in 13 when I played through it, and I've only played through it once. I didn't really like the characters or the story because, it was very, they took generic and they just made it ultra generic, and I think they took Lightning and they tried to make her like Auron, but at the same time they put too much into her to be like Auron, and she just came off as very cold and very douchey. For 25 hours in the game, the game's basically holding your hand. You can't go out, there's no exploration, there's no towns, there's hardly really any NPCs, you can't, It's basically like they were sitting, like the developers were saying, "We want you to play this game our way, not your way. So if you want to play this, you have to play it our way." I didn't really like that because RPGs and MMOs are about however you want to play. You don't have to do all the main quests. You can go and screw around, maybe grind, maybe do side quests and stuff, and go at your own pace. This 13, it wasn't anything like that. You know. Um, it felt like for at least 25 hours it was training wheels on. And you know what? See, the thing is, I think they sort of thought that they wanted to bring new people to the game, so they wanted to make it ultra easier for new people. But you have to understand, a big portion of the people who are going to play it are going to be people who've already been playing the series for many years already, who honestly know what's going on. Like someone like me or any of you who been playing it for years on end know how to play RPGs at this point, because at this point you put years into playing RPGs and you get what it is, what it's like. This I think was a big mistake by then, and not only that, but you decided to turn this into a trilogy. Now I never played Lightning Returns because, quite frankly, I played 13-2 as well, and I had no urge to complete the whole trilogy because I just never found it really that interesting. 13-2, before it came out, they said they were going to fix the problems of the original 13. And some of that was true, but also what you did was another big mistake, is with DLC. Okay, now DLC, pretty much every game today has DLC. It's basically you make a game, you take out some of the content in it to make an extra few bucks off it. They'll charge you like $5 or something. And what they did, Square, which was probably one of the dumbest mistakes you could have made, is making a true ending and charging people $5 for it, or however much it was. I mean, honestly, you're treating your customers, like you're the mafia. You're trying to squeeze them for as much money as you can. People are already paying $60 for the game, but now you're saying, nope, if you want to see the real ending, you gotta pay an extra $5. It was like a slap in the face, and I'm like, you know what? They're gonna make more games with 13. I'm not playing it anymore, and that's what I did. That's why I didn't play Lightning Returns, because quite frankly, some things about it looked good, like the whole making your own class thing and doing whatever you want was one thing, but making it timed like Majora's Mask was just stupid. Come on, it's like you take 2 steps forward and about 4 steps back. And see, this all ties in with the whole, downfall of the series was, well, part of it, a big part of it, I think, was because of the departure of guys like Sakaguchi and Uematsu. Now, for a lot of you who probably already know, some of you don't, Sakaguchi left because, basically, well, the major thing was the failure of the Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within that movie. It basically bombed, and basically they showed him the door afterwards, which I thought was kind of stupid, because you have someone like Sakaguchi who took a company that in the beginning was about to close down, made one final game, and basically it became a huge success and it turned everything around, and the guy makes a mistake and you show him the door. That's kind of stupid, because not only, because for a very long time, not only did Square have the Final Fantasy series, you had the Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross. You had Vagrant Story, Xenogears, Einhander, The Bouncer, games like that. Like Parasite Eve. For a very long time, this was a company that was constantly hitting home runs with games they were making. Back in the day, throughout the 90s, they were a powerhouse of gaming. Honestly, when you're making games that are home runs each time, that's something special. And when that one person who is behind the majority of it makes a mistake, you get rid of them. That's the stupidest thing you could do. If you're gonna judge someone's, accomplishments and failures, you really have to look at stuff like that. If he's had more successes than failures, then why would you get rid of him? People make mistakes. You're not gonna hit a home run every single time, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the series started to change the way it was, because you have guys coming in, I'm not gonna list all the names, but they, I think, didn't know the series as well as guys like Sakaguchi knew. Imatsu knew it. That's why we've seen such a big change. Now, I'm not saying that the series should never ever change, but I think that the reason why, like, main reason why my problem with 13 is the way it is because of how distant it was from what Final Fantasy has been all about. You take in a game which does give you a lot of freedom, which you could play the way you want to play, and you're stripping all that down. You're stripping away the exploration. You're stripping away a lot of the RPG elements to compete with more next gen games of today. I mean, come on, Square Enix doesn't even need to do that. You guys already established as a gaming powerhouse. Why do you need to change for other companies to compete with them? That's just stupid, Another thing I've sort of read about the whole decline, of the Final Fantasy and Square's company is what would have happened if guys like Sakaguchi never left. I always found this to be interesting because I I honestly think that if him and the other people who left who made the Final Fantasy series successful and the other game successful didn't leave, is that I think the series probably would have been a lot better off than it is today. Now, some people will argue, well, things like 13, are popular, and that may be true, but when you look at the sales figures for 13.2, and then Lightning Returns, there's a drastic decline of how many people are buying the unit. And not only that, but, at least the gaming stores by me, I go into them and I'm seeing many, many, many used copies of 13 and 13.2. All used copies going for like $5 each. I mean, honestly, if a game is that popular, is that successful, then why are so many people returning it? And it's only you go buy a used copy for like $5. We look at the other older Final Fantasy games, used copies and even the newer copies go for a lot more money than that. And that's because they were popular, Because one way I judge a game's success is that after you complete it, after you complete a game, if you have no inkling to go back to replay like I did with 13, if you have no inkling to replay the game, or if I didn't do this, but if you go to a store and trade it in and sell it, that really doesn't say that a game is really that good. Because, you see, the good thing about the older Final Fantasy is they have replay value, Someone on here talked about, if you can sort of erase your memory and play one of your favorite Final Fantasies over again like the first time, that actually happened to me once. There was time when I didn't play Final Fantasy 9 for almost 6 years. So when I played it again after that time, it felt like playing for the first time, and it was an awesome experience, if you make games that no one wants to play through a second time, and there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with your story writing. There's something wrong with just you making that game the way it was, Now, it's been noted over the past few years that Square has had a lot of financial problems, kind of like Capcom. Capcom lost a lot of money, so has Square. And someone said, like, what would happen, if Square actually went out of business and they couldn't make any more games and went bankrupt and that was it. Would the Final Fantasy series die? Well, I don't know, because we don't know if someone else could just buy the rights to the game and make it themselves. What would be sort of awesome is that, let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, Square Enix went out of business. They lost all their money, they can't make any more games. And Sakaguchi came along with Mistwalker and bought the rights to the games. And he starts making them under, his command again. We would probably see a resurgence in the popularity again because of who he is. Because whether you like the guy or not, he has a big gift when it comes to role playing games. I mean, I think one person Because this also brings up the whole fanboy thing, because there's a lot of fanboys of 13 who will sit there and say, well, I like 13, but all the other games that came before it suck. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, because how are you a fan of a major series like Final Fantasy and it's 13th installment, but hate all the other games that came before it? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Now, one other fanboy said, well, turn-based battles, they're so old, and it's old school, and it's broken, and I guess a lot of people haven't played Lost Odyssey, because I'm only partly into Lost Odyssey by Sakaguchi, which, yes, it's turn-based, but let me tell you, this game is not a pushover. You can't blast through this game, because the battles in this game are a lot more difficult than anything else I've played. Like, if you go into this half-ass like I did the first time, you will get your ass kicked. It's true. That's what I did the first time, so that's why when I started playing it again, I was a lot more serious about it. That proves that turn-based combat, I don't mind action RPGs and stuff, but turn-based combat is not dead. It's not completely broken. If you tune it the right way, you don't make it so easy that you can just breeze through it, then yeah, I'm thinking it still could be good. And I always sort of felt like Lost Odyssey probably should have been Final Fantasy 13, because you played the game, a lot of you haven't played it, I suggest you get it. It's on the Xbox 360, and it's very well worth it. It really feels more like a Final Fantasy than anything else, it really does. You have a lot of the similar spells, the similar storylines, a lot of the similar items and abilities. I felt like that should have been 13 more than 13 itself. And this also brings up the next topic is that, we have Final Fantasy XIV and Realm Reborn. I played a little bit of it and it's pretty good. But I remember when the original 14 came out. I think it was a few years ago it came out. And I never played the original, but I had friends who played it, and they just said to me, don't even bother. Don't. The game, it's broken. It's, don't even. It's such a mess that, and this was the first time publicly Square came out and apologized for making a bad game. I mean, you think about this for a second, and it's almost like you went from making some of the best games imaginable to apologizing for making bad games. When you're giving people refunds because the game you made was lazy and half-assed, and that it failed completely, and you gotta apologize for that, there's problems. And the people who are working there, who are in charge of these projects, shouldn't be there. I'm sorry. Getting rid of Sakaguchi, Uematsu, and all those other guys was a bad idea. It was a bad business idea, and it's like taking your best ball player and trading him for someone who really sucks. It's stupid. And a lot of people are gonna openly say, and I think because for those of you who are interested in watching videos like the one I'm making, there's a channel on YouTube called Alpha Omega Sin. Yeah, Alpha Omega Sin, and he talks about, like, he's a big collector, and he talks about a lot of the bullshit Square Enix has been doing in the past. One of these things is about remakes. Now, when we talk about remakes, right? There's either two groups of people. There's either the people who are completely for it, who want to see remakes, or there's the people who don't want remakes because they're scared that, it's somehow gonna ruin the original game. My thing is this, even if Square made like a remakes of the old game and they screwed up, they fucked up, the original is still there. The original isn't going to magically disappear because they made a remake. Okay? And they've actually done pretty successful so far in terms of remakes and remasters. I mean, you have the PSP versions of Final Fantasy 1 and 2, which they remade, which was actually very, very good. They updated the graphics. They made spells look a lot better. It was very good. Especially, I think the most successful one was 4. They did the complete collection where it has the original 4, updated graphics, it has the interlude, and it has the after years, it has a lot of content. That is very good. You see, you can make very successful remakes if you do it in that fashion. For example, one of the biggest things is the remake of 7. Now, Square for many years has been toying with it. They've been sort of holds dangling a carrot above us saying, oh, we're going to remake the 7, but then they keep reneging and say, no, we're not going to do it. One of the biggest things, now this screams bullshit, was that Square came out and said, well, if we are going to make a remake for 7, whenever we come out with a new Final Fantasy, people have to buy as many units as 7 sold. Now, the reason why I claim bullshit on this is because, yeah, we can all listen to it and go out and buy whatever Final Fantasy game they push out next and sell a lot of units, and they can just say, well, you know what, we're really not going to make it. Sorry. It's just, it's kind of like they stopped caring about what the fans thought, because some of their failures, they've been either placed on either Eidos version, part of Square Enix, Eidos, for Tomb Raider and stuff, blaming them for the failures of Final Fantasy, and the fans. If you actually, opened your ears and listened to the fans or read the things they say, you probably can make a very successful game. But the fact is, you're being very stubborn, okay? You want to do things your way, only your way, and then when it doesn't work, you're going to put the blame on somebody else, thinking it's someone else's fault. No, it's your fault, because you're stubborn, you don't want to listen to your fan base. Every company that's successful should always listen to their customers and their fan base, because these are the people paying for the games, these are the people that giving them money. It's common business sense, we have 15 coming out, which is supposed to be 13 versus how many years they worked on that, and they bullshitted us about 13 verses. I'm personally not getting it, because I got turned off by 15 because, I don't have next gen. I don't have a PS4 and Xbox One. I just have a PlayStation 3. I have a 360 and the other consoles. And they originally were going to release it for the 360 and the PS3, and I was going to get it. But now they reneged and said, oh, we're just making it for next gen. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to spend $400 for PS4 and almost $60 for Final Fantasy 15, plus the money is probably going to go into DLC just to play the game, almost $500. That's not worth it. I'm sorry. After a lot of reports are even saying now that the game itself is only 40 hours long. Really? Well, we're making a genuine RPG experience, but it's 40 hours long. 40 hours. I mean, come on. Most Final Fantasy games, yeah, you could do storyline within 40 hours or whatever, but there's still side quests. There's still exploration. You go wander around the world and fuck around, and it's going to amount to a lot more than 40 hours. You're taking a game where you're promising, oh, it's open world and this and that, but you're making it short. Why would you do that? You want to make a genuine RPG Final Fantasy experience, make it a long game. That's what people want. People want engaging storylines, okay, that are long enough for us to give a shit about the characters, to care about the plot, and make us care to play more, to get deeper into it. That's just my personal experience, because most modern games today, you could, especially first-person shooters, you could defeat in 4 or 5 hours, and once that's done, it's multiplayer, and that's it? You're paying $60 for that? I think it's a lot of bullshit. And if that's the route Square is going to go with Final Fantasy, well, you're going to fall flat on your ass. I'm just telling you that right now. You're going to turn off enough fans to the point where even if you want to release further games, no one's going to give a shit. I'm sorry. There's people who just stopped caring about Final Fantasy because of all the changes. Change is good, but when it's too drastic and it's pushing people away instead of wanting to bring them closer, that's a problem, and that's a huge problem. It would be awesome if guys like Sakaguchi and Uematsu came back and took over the series, because I think it would be great. They would make modern games that would be awesome. I mean, you have, you say you have a game that looks like Final Fantasy 15, but has gameplay and story like games from 1 to 9 and 10, and that would be very successful, at least in my opinion. Nothing really more I could say instead of for me to babble on, but I want to know what you guys think. Start a discussion, make a video response, whatever you guys want to do. I hope I didn't offend anybody. But the things I said, and if I did, I'm sorry. And I hope you guys just enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.